Perfect. Okay. Thanks a lot. Hello, everybody. Thanks again for sharing this time with me and letting me explain a little bit about my intentions and my work. First of all, also, excuse me for not being able to share with you some time last time. I was in the middle of a road and it was pretty difficult to get to Medellin that time. So, okay, here we are. I am DJLU, also named as Juega Siempre. Um, I've been an artist, a street artist, almost 20 years now, painting on the streets. I studied arts and architecture, so I have this um, double studies, which for me is very important because it allows me to get a wide view on the city and understand like the urban aspects of the city, which is the perfect place for a street art. And then again, I also studied arts, plastic arts in the National University, which is the public university here in Bogota. So those two careers allowed me to get into a street art with a wider view. And I am also one person that thinks that nowadays every type of acknowledge that you can sum to your intentions and to your way of acting, it's good. I don't believe in hyper specialization, which is something that nowadays we are seeing a lot. I believe that arts allow you to touch a lot of different artistic expressions like design, like architecture, like painting, like music, even music, because I was a DJ. That's where my name DJLU come from. So I would like to start by showing you the first serious project that I started with when I went out to the streets, because it's good to quote that I've been painting and I wanted to be an artist since I was a kid. But when I started painting on the street, and that was around year 2000, but it's gonna be more than 20 years now. I started painting on the street like in a very intuitive way. It wasn't very serious. I was more like playing, like losing the fear of painting on the streets, like getting to know the dynamics of the city and the night and the legal issues that are around painting on the streets. But I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was pretty sure about the big power that painting on the streets had in terms of communication, but I didn't knew what to do at that point. So I started like around year 2004, giving form to this project, which I call pictograms or signs for a better world. It started because I noticed the power of signs in the cities, of signs in terms of directing people, of telling people what to do or not to do. The signs in terms of organizing our society in some kind of way. And also I love the way in which signs were able to be very synthetic. So they were avoiding the unnecessary details and leaving only the essential in terms of communication. So if you see a sign, you know that that sign is going to communicate to you something in 3 seconds. And most of the time, signs are intended to prevent, to to tell you what to do or to prevent you in terms of one situation. So I started getting like getting this sign language, which is very close to semiotic, to the semiotic language, to the symbol. So I started getting advantage of it and making my own signs, my own pictograms. That this time they weren't intended, of course, on telling you where to stop, where to park, but they were intended in showing a lot of situations that I believe that we are we are getting those situations all of the time, but most of these situations are not being visibilized by traditional media, because I understand that traditional media most of the times nowadays it's being dominated by economics or political ways of view. So these signs were like a counterpart signs that I put on the streets in terms of showing and pointing out a lot of situations that have to do, for example, with economics, with war as a business, with the relationship in between war and game, with the infectious disease that the soldiers here in the tropics get because of our conflict here in Colombia and in tropical areas in our world. They talk about discrimination. They talk about the new media. They talk about religion. They talk about pollution and what we are doing to our planet. They talk about the relationship in between economics, capitalism, and environmental destroy. They talk about the religion and the church as an institution and the problems that the church have as an institution, specifically in terms of pedophilia. They talk about our instinct of war, our violent instinct as human beings. They talk about human relationships. They talk about migration and immigration. They talk about the our dependence on fossil fuels and how it is affecting our environment. They talk about, as I told you, the relationship of war and game, the lyric and the war, how war is managed as a game and vice versa. Sometimes the game is handled as a war and I end up fighting with the people that I am playing. They talk about political systems. They talk about global warming. They talk about football as a business also, and how it entertains people, and sometimes it puts them in a situation where they avoid the essential because they are getting the circus part, the entertainment. They talk about the new media, Instagram, Facebook, and how it is in some ways manipulating society. They talk, of course, about corruption, which is a big issue here in our third world countries. They talk about mining, illegal mining, destroying of the territory. These were the ones that I made lately, 1.5 years ago or 2 years ago. They have to do specifically with what came out during the pandemics, because the pandemics not only came with all the terrible situation in terms of medical issues, but also it made the world to show up the most terrible things that we had as humanity. For example, a lot of differences in terms of the medical system. And it pointed out how people that has money can save themselves, but the other ones can't. They talk about how we as human beings are all in the same plane in terms of the virus. The virus attacks everybody, even though if he is Chinese, American, Colombian, black, white, poor, or rich. So it put us all in the same situation, in the same plane. It shows us as our fragility as humanity. It showed the difficulties in the medical system and the situation of terrible abandon in which the medicals were working during the pandemics. Here in Colombia, we had a lot of people working in terrible situations, and they got caught by the virus and the virus. They just did it because they love medicine and they love saving people, but of course most of them weren't getting paid. It also showed up the police abuse, because of course pandemics also brought a lot of social discomfort, social protest, and then it came the police abuse. it wasn't only here, it was also in the US with the racial issues that came out with the death of Mr. Floyd. So it also shows the terrible decisions that some of the governments were taking in terms of the pandemics, because most of them weren't used to that problem. So they were in some kind of way improvising in terms of politics. They didn't know what to do. So most of them put us into confinement when we didn't need it. And now when we need it, we are not in confinement. And here in Colombia, when I got the coronavirus, we were having 45,000 cases daily. So it was terrible. And the government wasn't doing anything because they were in between two very difficult situations. That was the economics versus the medical issues. Or either I let the people die of hunger, either I let the people die of coronavirus. It also points out the relationship in between COVID and viruses in general and capitalism, because I do believe that capitalism is pushing people and a society into nature areas that are intended to be for those animals and those viruses, and the interaction in between people getting into their territory is what is making the virus jump from the animals to human beings. So of course, for me, it has to do with a terrible way of seeing at capitalism. It has to do also with the situation of the banks during the pandemics. They weren't helping people. They put themselves in the situation in that they wanted to earn more money and not letting people breathe in terms of loans, in terms of the relationship that they have with the bank. So it came also an economic crisis, and it showed that the banks are, of course, a business and not a social enterprise. The police abuse, which was very, very significant, not only here but in the US, the racial issues, the racial discrimination, not only here but in the US also. And of course, we know that the US is like a window to the world, and unfortunately sometimes we need that example in okay, now it happened in the US, so it does exist. But we have to know that here racism has existed all the time, and political differences had existed all the time. So sometimes it's necessary that we got the example from the outer countries to pay attention to the problem. Of course, the police abuse, of course, the empowerment of people that we can see here in the microphone, that it turns out to be a feast. Here in Colombia, we've been going through a very, very important social movement during the last 6 months. We've been having riots, we've been having raids, we've been having a lot of different manifestations that also has to do with cultural experiences. So it's becoming very important, the possibility of the empower of the people, the empowerment of the normal people. Also some pictograms that have to do with the peace process. Here in Colombia, we are struggling with a peace process with the FARC guerrilla that it established 2 years ago, but it hasn't been easy to put into. So a lot of people that went into the process has been murdered. The government nowadays doesn't want to put money into the process, so it's been pretty difficult to carry out the peace process that started 2.5 years ago. Here we can see like a process of the stencil. I do work with the stencil, that it's mainly a surface that has some cuts on it and allows painting to go through those spaces that you have cut through. It's pretty cool because it allows you to put a lot of impacts. So it's like a matrix that allows you to put many impacts of the same image. So it do act as a counterpart to advertisement in some kind of way. You know that advertisement works in terms of showing you the ad 20 times. So what I try to do is the same on the streets. I'm going to show you the impossibilities and the problems of capitalism, and I'm going to put it 20 or 30 or 50 times on the street, because I do believe that when I put it more, the message is wider, and the stencil allows me to do that. It is also very practice for people that are not very good drawing. As I am not a very virtuous person in terms of drawing. So the possibility of doing the cutout and doing this matrix is very interesting, because it allows me to deliver the message in a very simple and clear way. It allows me to put a lot of impacts. So it has to do also with the reproduction. At last, it has to do with what Walter Benjamin talked, the possibility of reproduction and avoiding the idea of the original. I am a master, I am the original, nobody can do it as I can. For me, that's bullshit. I do prefer reproduction. I do prefer the ideas going through everybody. I do prefer changing minds in terms of moving some minds, opening some gaps in your acknowledge, and not being a virtuous person and getting an effort on doing something that nobody can do. For me, that doesn't make sense. Even more nowadays in an era that we are in which we are living, that is an era of reproduction, collision, mixing, clashing, homogene, appropriation. I do believe in those possibilities. This is some pictures that I took out of during the pandemics. I do love painting on the streets in an informal way. I do believe that appropriating the city in an informal way is very powerful, and I do believe in the right that we have as citizens to appropriate our city. Probably the city in terms of museum city, it's a city that wants to preserve very clean, very historic, very in terms of the past. I want to see the downtown of the city as it was 3 centuries ago, or 20 or 10 centuries ago. But I don't believe that. I do believe that the city is changing. I do believe that cities are alive, and I do believe that cities must be willing to interact with the people that live on them. I do believe in the right of affecting and interacting with the city, and going out of the possibility of being consumers and becoming citizens, active citizens. So I did like this photograph during the pandemic when we were in a really, really hard lockdown. So it was very interesting to discover the city under that possibility. It was very easy to paint during those days because nobody was on the streets. So it was very, very easy, and it was a very interesting action. I also photographed advertisement or simple information that has to do with the virus and the situation. People at that point weren't very sure of what to expect. So it was a very interesting and radical times. We're talking about 1 year ago, probably June, July of last year. These pictograms are in a small format. They are probably 40, 50 centimeters tall, which allows me to go on the streets with a small pack and probably take 8 or 10 pictograms, different pictograms, and start putting them all around. I don't take more than 30 seconds putting one of these pictograms on the streets. I always use black because then again, I avoid unnecessary details, and I avoid color because color has a significance. And for me, I don't want more significance than the one that it's on it. So for example, if I do it pink, it's gonna say something different, or if I do it green. So I try to keep it very simple in black, avoiding the message. I tried most of the time to avoid also text. It's not the case in here in the one that says bank, but I try to avoid text because text again is gonna be something that if you don't know the language is gonna get you a part of the message. This has to do with the Capitol and what happened the last year when people entered the Capitol and the White House in the US. As I told you, they're very simple. I avoid the unnecessary detail. This is a series that I made during the pandemic that has to do with the terrible decisions that our president and some of the presidents around in the neighbor countries were taking in terms of the pandemics. So if it looked like they were without a possibility of looking forward, like if they had this impossibility of taking care of the pandemics. So it has to do with the president here in Colombia, Duque. It says consume and spread the disease, because as I told you, they were in this difficult decision of letting people work, economics to keep going on, or put people into a very hard restriction and not letting them work, but probably keeping them safe from the virus. It's also a pointing out into Bolsonaro that has managed the pandemics really, really, really bad, and Mr. Trump. So it has to do with that possibility or that dichotomy in between economics, shopping, buying, moving economy, and dying at the same time. This is a virtual or digital project that we did with a girl that it's a street and art. She worked with a street artist in Guayaquil, and she invited us to make part of this festival that it was a digital festival, digital street festival that she did in Ecuador, in Guayaquil during the pandemics. So she gathered a lot of artists from different parts of the world who sent the work. Of course, it's all a digital recreation. They sent the work. She sent us the wall. It is a real wall in Guayaquil. We did the digital recreation, and we sent it back to her, and she did a compilation, a publishing in terms of the digital Biennale. So it's also nice because that impossibility of acting in the street, which is something that is very important for us as a street artist, you know, to act on the street, to paint on the street, and to use the physical space, it was impossible for us because we were in confinement. So it was nice that one of the possibilities was to start working on the virtual plane. So here we mix like the digital work and also the real placement in Guayaquil, the real wall. So those are like possibilities that came out and that came out and start like being very, very, very real. It became very real, the digital possibilities during the pandemics, because we weren't able to use the real space. So we started to use the digital, the virtual space in a lot of ways. This is also a very political work that I started doing during the pandemics. It has to do with characters, people that has to do with the politics here in Colombia. These two are lawyers that are defending corrupt politicians here in Bogota, in Colombia. So, for example, this here in the right is Abogado Cadena, which at one point he says that he was they caught him talking in some conversations, and he was saying that he was an abogangster. He was a gangster. He was a gangster lawyer. And when they put out on the news that, he says, no, I didn't say I was a gangster. I said I was a hamster. So I say, you're not a hamster, you're a rat. You're a rat. So I put the rat lawyer, and the other one, it's a guy that all the time he has an audience, he has a work to do with lawyers. He says that his client got a digestive problem, and he couldn't go to the audience because he got a digestive problem. So I put for the right of cheating, because he always has to cheat, and his clients always gotta cheat, and they can never go to the audience. So I put okay, for the right of cheating, you know, because he's always saying that his clients couldn't go because they have an intestinal problem. This is our ex-president, of course, Álvaro Uribe, which it's a very controversial nowadays because of his links with the paramilitary. So he got taken out of the Congress because he was a congressman, but he was taken out of the Congress because he got to face the justice because of his aid and the making of paramilitary groups during his presidency. So when he got taken out of the Congress and he got he was going to be judged, I did this, which has to do with everybody here in Colombia. We want him to talk. We want him to talk. That's the most important thing. For example, I don't believe in punishment that much. I believe in truth and reconciliation. So what I say, even though I hate this ex-president, I don't want to see him in jail. What I want to see him is saying and talking and explaining and asking for forgive of all those terrible things that he did. So I did a graphic in which I put him with a microphone, and I also put the hand of a singer. It's really the hand of Walter Mercado, but that's the way I act, like mixing, clashing things. So I put this sign that says, "I want to see you singing." That's like we want to hear what you know. Let us know what you gotta say, because you know a lot of things that probably could heal the problem of this country. And I believe that truth and reconciliation are the most important possibilities of healing. And I do believe that here in Colombia, what we need nowadays is healing, not more punishment, but healing. So I want to see what you gotta say. The one on the right is it's a reservoir, a water reservoir that they did in a place called Ituango. And during the filling of the reservoir and the construction of the reservoir, they covered a lot of places in which people have been buried. People have been massacred and have been buried, and they built this dam, and a lot of people were criticizing because they are doing the dam in the places where people have been buried. And it's a way also of throwing water into the problem and letting people forget about those terrible crimes. So of course, a lot of people were opposing to the building of that dam. So what I did is the logotype of the dam, that it's Idritango, and I put Camposanto, that is like cemetery, Idrituango Cemetery. These are the images of our ex-president and the actual president, Duque and Uribe, and they are inspired in a death metal group band of the USA that is called Massacre. So I took the album cover and I did a new interpretation with the faces of these politicians, trying to point out that because of the decisions of these politicians, we have been involved in a lot of massacres, killing of people during 2 decades that these people have been on power, from 2002 to 2022. This has to do with the false positive scandal. Nowadays, we have more than 6,402 people that has been known and discovered and identified as being killed by the government only because they wanted to show results in the war against the guerrillas. But these 6,000 people were innocent, and they were taken by the state with false ideas, with false promises, taken out of their homes and murdered and shown as if they were guerrillas, or as if they were terrorists, or as if they were opposed to the government. But in the reality, they were just innocent people. Many of them, they even had problems in terms of acknowledge. They were people that they were normal people. I mean, they were people that had problems in terms of physical or acknowledged problems, and they took them and they showed them as if they were guerrillas and they were fighting the government. This is the Minister of War, as I call it, is the Minister of Defense, but he has been handling the social protest in a very, very repressive way. So during the protest, we had more than 80 people that has been disappeared. We have more than 20 people that has been taking their eyes out because of the police when they clashed with the riots. And he wasn't listening to those problems. He never resigned to his position. So I showed him as if it was a Nazi commander. So I put him with a Nazi hat and the cross, you know, the cross that is related with the Nazi. This I did for the struggling of the public university in terms of getting their price lowered, because most of the people here that goes into public university, they aren't able to pay a very high price for studying. And of course, we are trying to fight for the possibility of having a free public university. And for me and for the people that goes on into this struggle, we do believe that education is the most important and powerful possibility of changing this country. So it's important that people can access the public university in a very low price or totally free. So this is a mural that I did trying to struggle for that possibility. During the social harassment that we had here, people were using the red flag as a possibility of showing that they were hunger, that they're having hunger, that they're having it really hard. Of course, there is also the casserole or the casserole that has become like a symbol of the struggle also, because when people are in a situation where they wanted to show their problems, they start hitting the casserole it's like a pacific way of struggling. So the casserole became, and the casserole, it became a symbol of social struggle here in Colombia. And of course, the artistic that also was part of this struggle, and it was very interesting because these riots, this struggle were very different as the ones that we were having years ago, because this struggle was very mixed with artistical and cultural expressions, which was very, very nice. And it didn't happen only downtown in the center of Bogota, which was the way of protesting before. We're going to downtown, we're going to the house of the president, we're going to the plaza, Central Plaza, and that's where we can protest. Nowadays, during this last protest, it became very evident that the protest was like being it became atomized. It wasn't only taking place downtown, but in different places of the city. Specifically, one of them which was very important was Los Héroes, which was a monument that was intended to commemorate the battles that Simón Bolívar went through to liberate these countries. But nowadays, it came a monument to the protest. So everybody painted on the monument. They gave a new significance to the space, to the monument, and that was really important, because the monument is not now making homage to some situation that is really apart from us, because it took place 250 years ago, and I don't know even who Simón Bolívar is, because nowadays here in Colombia they don't even give you history lessons. But people are more into getting to know what the struggle is going on, and they get to know the struggle through the walls. And this collective and these people, what we call the people from the, yeah, from the main people, everybody is taking the monument, is making a new significance of the monument, is painting all over it, and is putting on the monument the newest struggles and the new interest of the people, not somebody that is really apart from me and that it's being imposing and that it's imposing me a history, which I don't have to do anything with that nowadays. This has to do also with the paro nacional and the stencil, which is the technique that I use. These are homages to people that were killed during the struggle. This is Flex, which is a graffiti artist that got killed during the protest in Cali by, we don't know by whom, because a lot of paramilitary people also started killing the protesters. The problem was that it wasn't only the police or the military, but also people that were making part of paramilitary groups, people that are not part of the state. So it was really difficult to identify them. This is Lucas Villa. He was also killed in Pereira, and he became like a very iconic representative of the struggle, because he was a very peaceful guy, very youthful, very peaceful, very happy, and he was trying to there are some videos of him during the protest trying to tell people that the way of protesting is through sheerness, through peaceful acts, and he got killed also by paramilitary. A guy came in a big car and they shot him 5 times. So he became a very iconic character of the protest. These 2 guys were killed also during protests in Mosquera and Madrid, excuse me, that it's a town like close to Bogota, very close to Bogota. So it's very important to do these homages to them, because the representation of a person is like bringing them alive, like bringing them together. So representing somebody in a wall is very important for me in different levels. First of all, keeping the memory alive. We know the importance of a representation. We were talking about, for example, photography. Representing something is like having that person again. Having a photograph of somebody is like having that person with me. So showing the image of somebody is very powerful. As I was telling you, in many ways. One is keeping memory alive, but the other one is pointing out the crime. So I say, okay, if I am the police that killed these guys and I go through this, well, probably it's not going to be easy for me. I'm going to have it hard, because it's like reminding them the crime that they committed. This is also a very powerful project. The 9th of September last year, a guy was killed by the police, and that ended up in a social arrest in which many of the police stations, a lot of police stations here in Bogota were burned. Were burned because people was very, very angry because the police killed an innocent guy in one police station. So we all went out to protest, and some people even protested in a harder way, and they burned the police stations, and the police responded shooting people. So they killed 13 people that night. The night of the 9th of September, 13 people were killed. Most of them innocent people that weren't even protesting. So this is a homage to some of those people that were killed during the 9th of September massacre. So these are like homaging and memory medallions. They say I was killed by police, because as I'm telling you, for me, it's very important to point out directly the people that are responsible. And I am not only sure that the responsible is the police himself that killed, but the institution, because the institution hasn't been able to help the people that is doing the investigations, and only one police has been judged. This happened 1 year ago, and only one police has been judged for these killings. The rest are being covered by the institution. So it's not, okay, there are rotten apples, it's the problem of a police. No, it's the problem of an institution that is trying to cover these people also, and that they are even threatening the families of these people, because I've been working with the families of these people, and I know about police as an institution threatening these people in order to stop the investigations. So this is a homage to Andy Vaquero, to Julian Gonzalez, to Germán Puentes, to Juliet Ramirez, to Andres Felipe Rodriguez, and to 7 other people that were killed by the police during the 9th of September massacre. Something that is terrible is that nowadays the police is even censoring these paintings. Nowadays, I go through where I painted these medallions, and most of them have been censored by the police. And you know it's the police because it's not a people that are doing an advertise and they put a paste up over it. No, you can see that with a painting, they scratch where it says police killed me, and they scratch the name of the guy. And it's not one, it's a lot of them that has been censored by the police. So something that is terrible is, okay, it's terrible that you kill these guys, but something that is terrible again is killing their memory. And something that is probably good for me is knowing that painting this on the street it's hurting them. It's hurting them, it's hurting the institution, and they have to send somebody to censor it and erase it, because it's making the effect that I wanted with the painting. It's telling them, okay, listen, this is terrible. You guys as an institution killed 13 people and nothing is happening. This is Dylan Cruz, which was also killed during a riot. He was killed 2 years ago now, but it has become also a symbol because police is going through at the place that they killed him, downtown Bogota. We have like a memory space, a memorial space. So we paint over there, the families take flowers, and it's terrible because police go back and they erase what we paint. They break the flowers that we put, and it's terrible. So here it says, in this medallion, it says what I'm talking about. It says, me vuelven a matar borrando mi memoria. It's that you're killing me again by erasing my paintings. Something terrible is killing the people, but erasing their memory, it's terrible. This is a project that I've been making probably 3 years ago, that it's intended to show the social leaders that has been killed in this terrible conflict. Nowadays, for example, we have more than 280 people that demobilized from the FARC guerrilla and entered the peace agreement that has been murdered. 280 people. So how are you gonna bet for peace in this country if you know you're gonna get killed afterwards? So this is Jair Cortés, Yolanda Perea, Temístocles Machado, Doris Valenzuela. They are all social leaders that has been killed. In terms of the technique, I told you I used the stencil. In the pictogram projects, it's a very simple one-color stencils. When I do these homages through the portraits, I also try to keep it into the shades of gray, because I am very respect of photography, and for me the possibility of doing a portrait in grays has to do also with that a reminiscence of the black and white photography, which is for me talking about something that is a little bit apart, you know, apart in time, apart in a different plane, is dead, or it also has to do with sculpture a little bit. And the most important thing, it prioritizes form over color. I believe that color sometimes distract you from the essential, and I do believe that also color in the streets, on the streets, and in urban art, sometimes it's very there is a lot of color on the streets, and sometimes the color is an interference. Sometimes the color is too noisy and doesn't allow you to get the essentials. So what I try to do when I started doing my artistic proposal is that I tried to avoid a color, or when I work with color, I try to work only with grays and with a little a little ladder of colors, colors that are very similar in between one and the other. For example, orange, yellow, and red. I don't like that much color. I don't like that more contrast. Sometimes what I do is that I mix both of my projects, because probably you noticed that, well, I have the portraits and the homages project, and also have the pictograms. So sometimes what I try to do is to mix them both. So I do the portrait, and in the background I try to use the pictograms. Emilsen Manjoma, Jose Jimer Cartagena. And I want to finish with these projects that are very interesting, because are some projects that also aroused during the crisis, social crisis that we've been living 1.5 years ago. At one point, people started getting together as a collective, and we started doing these huge letters that were pointing out a terrible situation that was going on here in Colombia. For example, this says SOS Genocide Colombia. So it has to do with the problem of the social leaders being killed, the massacres. And it's very interesting because it tried to leave the egocentrics of street artists on the side. We as street artists, most of the time work also through the ego, We like to put our name, we like to sign everything, we love fame. And at this point, we said, okay, it's probably more important to do a big impact through huge letters and not my name. So we gathered together. For example, this painting that you see here was made by more than 40 artists, and not only artists, but people that joined together, that wanted to collaborate. Some of them probably didn't know how to paint, but they collaborate putting money for the painting. So others collaborate bringing coffee for the artist. But the good thing is that we were able to leave the egocentric and the idea of myself in order to do an intervention, a project that involves a lot of people that wasn't in the head of somebody. It was more an anonymous project, and the huge format was also very interesting, because at one point I thought that it was intended to be seen through the social media, because it's so big. And it needed a drone. You can't see it if you don't have a drone. If I go in the bus, as you can see here, I'm gonna see each letter apart, and it's not gonna be easy to understand it. So what I discovered is that this new way of acting was also intended to be seen through drone images, through drone videos, drone photography, and through social media. So it was a way also of pointing out the situation that we were living here in Colombia to the people abroad. I mean, here we've been shouting and nobody is taking care of us. We're tired of telling the government what is going on. Probably it's time to show what is going on here in Colombia to the people outside. And this possibility of doing these block letters, huge block lettering, and using the drone images, and using the Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and this social media was a very contemporary and very important way of showing the situation that we were living here in Colombia to the people in other countries. These are some images of the process, which I told you is very interesting, because everybody is putting what they can, everybody's coming together, everybody's living their individuality to become a collective. And this is also a very nice project that also came out during the pandemic and during the social unrest. As I told you, there were a lot of riots taking place, and one of them that become really interesting and important was the one that was taking place in the Héroes Monument. in the Herios Monument is where I told you that there was a Simon Bolivar sculpture, but they took it down and they start painting all over and changing that is historical character for the contemporary character, which is the people. The people is the new moment. The monument is the monument for the people, not for the conquistador, not for Simon Bolivar, not from the liberator, no, for the people. And we noticed that there was a lot of cultural movement going on. So we noticed that this car that was like it was a car intended to give a taste of liquor in a gallery. You know, when there is a gallery, when there is an inauguration, they start giving liquor to the people. So this car was intended to give liquor to the people. And I told the owner of the gallery, what is this car doing over there? I've seen this car a lot, many during a long time. It stopped over there and nobody's using it. Why don't we take this car, give it a new way, a new life, which is not going to be the life of giving out liquor, but giving out posters, pasta, graphic, political graphic. So I told her, okay, let's put this car to the service of the riot, of the protest. We took the car out. We of course talked to a different artist. Nowadays there are more than 40 artists that has given us the pastes to fill the Chaza Gráfica. It's how it's called, the Chaza Gráfica. We filled the Chaza Gráfica with more than 40 artists, different artist pastes, and we went to these points of protest like Héroes, and we start giving out the pastes for free in order to keep the spirit up, basically, and in order to do an action that was out of the consumerism and capitalism circles. So it was an anti-capitalism action. Okay, we're not going to be in the buy and sell dynamic. We're going to give out these posters for free in order to keep the people happy and keep the people rebel. And these are some projections. Also the pictogram project is very interesting because as it is very simple in terms of graphic, it is very easy to put into different media. So it could be on t-shirts, it could be on stickers, it could be a stencil, it could be a painting, but it's also very simple to animate. So I started doing some animated GIFs, very simple. And I joined with some people that it's called the Nueva Banda de la Terraza in Medellin, that they were doing these projections downtown Medellin in order to open some minds of this. They were doing different types of projections. So we joined forces and we start projecting the pictograms with some type of small animation, a GIF animation, GIF animation, in order to communicate in a different channel as advertisement that we know that is taking and appropriating our cities. So it's a counter advertisement action. And this is like the social media. If people want to get a wider look of my proposals, of course, I have these 3 channels where they can take a look at my work. And that's it. So that's what I wanted to show you. Of course, this is a very, very fast look to my work. But of course, I hope you can get the idea and understand a little bit what my intentions are, what I've been doing through these 2 decades of acting on the streets, a little bit about my technique, and okay, I hope you like it.
Well, I think we definitely like it. Maybe you stop sharing now, I guess. I don't know.
Yes.
Going
Yes.
to the conversation. Yeah. No, it was a fabulous presentation. I mean, I'm going to respond to it. I've got a bunch of questions, but I'm going to try and put them into a kind of set of observations rather than asking you a question and then waiting for an answer and then, and so on. And it's going to be a bit self-indulgent in a way, right? Because I can't not look at this presentation without feeling something about it personally. because of course I lived in Colombia for 12 years and I've been going to Colombia since the 80s. But I remember seeing your stuff on the walls when I was living in Colombia in the 2000s. And obviously since then when I've gone back. But, you know, I used to see these things walking around the Candelaria and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't know who did it or you know, but it was nice to know that there was some kind of ironic observation going on there. There was a sense of a kind of critical consciousness there in the background. And it was a kind of nice feeling. I'm sorry using that word, but it was a feeling that gave you a sense of, look, yeah, some people can see through some of this stuff. And the kind of sense, I guess, in, you know, I thought in those early days anyway, there was a sense of kind of complacency in Colombia around so many things. I mean, I think I read somewhere you were talking in an interview about, you know, people being in a state of being asleep, you know, with all of the advertising and this kind of stuff, and people sort of sleepwalking into situations and preferring to turn a blind eye to many of the things which were going on in the country around them. So that really kind of simple or deceptively simple but really effective technique of putting images together in unexpected ways which kind of wrench things apart and defamiliarize, and they have a very, very kind of black humor. I mean, I'll be honest, some of them I got, some of them I didn't get. Maybe I'm a bit stupid, but some of them I got off, and other ones I didn't get, and I just carried on going about my business. But it was good to know they were there. So it's absolutely fascinating to hear you talking about what was motivating you when you were doing those things. So, I mean, that was really, really interesting. But I guess one of the things I'm thinking about this is it's kind of like the politics of it. What I notice as you talk through this is that the politics has become more and more important, right? It's become more and more important. It's more and more sort of in your face, if you like. And there's something maybe we can think about there, which is that, okay, maybe people were asleep. Okay, I mean, I think back to it's before the pandemic, and they seem a long way away. You talk about kind of like, you know, you mentioned a bit about the corruption in third world countries. Hey, corruption is here. It's everywhere. We live in one of the most corrupt countries imaginable. Yeah, you know, so it's not just a third world thing, you know, if we're still going to think in those terms. And that's why those things speak very much to us as well, right? But it's the idea too that, you know, that attempt to defamiliarize, to shock people. Well, you'd think, wouldn't you, that we've been through a series of shocks, right? You know, we went through the financial crisis, right? Then, you know, in Britain, then we had all of this stuff around Brexit. Now we've had the pandemic. You'd think people would have had plenty of shocks that would kind of, you know, push them into some kind of consciousness and awareness and activity, I guess, in a way. You know, a lot of people here right now are talking about COP21, you know, the climate crisis thing that's being held by Britain, and Boris Johnson's in the US and all of this sort of stuff, you know, supposedly looking to build consensus. But don't we know really that no one's going to do anything? They're not going to do anything there. There is no they. There's no people out there. There's no government out there thinking about, you know, the common good or trying to do anything for people, right? The worst case scenario is going to arrive. What we're going to have to do is kind of, you know, adapt to it. So in a sense, this idea of kind of like shocking people out of their complacency, you'd think that events themselves somehow, you know, would kind of be enough. And I find it really interesting that you talk about your kind of, you know, semiotics for a better world. And that's a great idea, yeah? So, you know, to begin with, of course, we have to start somewhere, don't we? We have to see through the problems that we're living now, or at least identify the problems that we have right now. But again, what strikes me is we're living in this peculiar kind of interregnum where the people who rule us are more shameless than ever before. They don't care that we know who they are. You know, I mean, we know plenty about Uribe. We know plenty about Boris Johnson. We know plenty about Trump. We know all of these things about these people, and yet nothing happens. They lie to us on a daily basis, and they don't care. It doesn't matter that they're caught out in their lies, because there are no consequences, it seems. And so in a strange kind of way, people still seem to be asleep because they're not acting. I mean, I know one of the things that was fascinating about the Colombia situation, of course, was that people were acting. That it was one of the few points where I felt positive that something was being done and going on. Of course, it's very difficult and it's very nostalgic for me because I haven't been able to go back to Colombia for 2 years. I've been stuck here. you know, and I'm someone who usually spends between, you know, 4 and 6 months in Colombia every year. It's la patria que yo escogí. But it's been a very strange kind of moment. But so sometimes I do get the feeling, and I don't know how you feel about this. I'm gonna put a kind of really negative spin on things. I think, you know, like we live in this moment where it reminds me of that kind of, you know, the Gramsci thing about the time of monsters. You know, we can see what's wrong, but we can't see what will emerge that will make things better. And it strikes me that to some extent anyway, a lot of these artworks, and this isn't a criticism of doing them, I think they're fabulous. I mean, I really enjoyed that presentation, and the recent work, which I hadn't seen before, is absolutely amazing. But don't you think that, like, there's a danger, not a danger, but one of the realities is that it becomes a kind of ironic commentary on the crapness of things, but that, you know, that nothing is going to be done about. Yeah, it's a kind of ironic commentary on decline, on this kind of state of general sort of decadence. That's the kind of feeling that I get. And I feel it not only, you know, looking at Colombia, but also looking here, looking at the US. You know, we're about to enter into a new Cold War now. You know, things seem to be accelerating, you know, the bad news is coming thick and fast. And where the way out of this labyrinth is becomes more and more difficult to see. So I guess that's my initial response to some of that there. I'm sorry if it sounds really sort of dark. I guess I'm in a dark state of mind at the moment.
Sure. No, of course, I understand your negativity. I am also the same negative in terms of what is going on, in terms of the government nowadays, in terms of the environmental situations. And I do believe that art is very, very powerful, and it's a peaceful way of trying to do something. I understand your way of your despair way of seeing, and of course I would also sometimes say, damn, I would like to go out and burn it all, and probably be the one that it's in the first line of protest, and I would make myself killed if I mean, nowadays it's worth it to fight till death because of what we are living. But then again, I believe that as an artist, one of the possibilities, the channels that we have is art. And art is very powerful in terms of pointing out a lot of things and pointing them out in a subversive way. As you talked about irony, if you talk about the possibility of being poetic. I mean, people is tired of seeing the newspaper and seeing 20 people got killed, the massacre, nobody's doing anything, we are all terrible in a terrible situation. People are getting used to that, and they sometimes get used to that and they don't do anything, you know? So I believe that the language of art is very important because it's subversive. It can show you different versions of a problem, and showing you that different version of a problem, probably not the literal direct way of seeing a problem with the massacre, showing you 20 people on the floor with the blood. No, but showing, for example, that same criticism, that same problem, but showing it in a subversive way, probably using the big power of art, doing something through a poetical possibility, through irony. It can probably delay a terrible message in a nice package. That's what I believe that art can do. It can make you be interested in something because it's nice, because the aesthetic is beautiful, because the graphic design is nice. And then when I approach it and I understand it, it's talking to me about terrible situation, but it's talking through a different version, through poetics, through symbolic language. And that's the very, very huge power that art has. Then again, I wanted to point out some movie that I love, that is 12 Monkeys. In 12 Monkeys, at the end, when the world was fucked up, the only possibility, the only clue to what was going on was a graffiti. They were graffiti, and I was like, fuck, if I would have paid attention to that graffiti, the world would have ended. So that's sometimes the possibilities that I find in my art. Say, okay, I am not going to change the world. I don't have the possibility of being a huge leader, a worldwide leader. Probably they have on their hands the decisions of making this a better world. As an artist, probably I don't have that possibility, but I think that I can act as all the social leaders that I have shown you have done, step by step, little by little. And I believe that that's also a possibility of changing the world, step by step, little by little, through poetics, through art, through semiotics.
And collectively, right? But I guess it's because it's also the kind of issue is that like we're in a moment of such crisis. We can't say we're going to wait for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you know? For many things, we have to do something now if we're going to do something. And you know, this is one of the issues. But I wanted to ask you something about the paro, which I found interesting too, was that, you know, looking at your comments, and of course I saw some of your comments when I was looking at the interviews that Alba did with you as part of her work, you know, on street art in Bogota. And I like that. I mean, yes, you very much reject this kind of idea of being panfletario, you know, having kind of obvious messages. But at the same time, you nonetheless have very strong messages. And it strikes me that they've got stronger and stronger over the recent period. The ones that you've produced during the period of the paro and the period of the pandemic couldn't be stronger, right? They're really in your face. But at the same time, yeah, I think there's something interesting here in that there's a kind of asymmetry, isn't there, around the paro in terms of the kind of the social cleavages which exist in Colombia, right? Between those people who see this kind of proliferation of messages. There was a very beautiful proliferation of messages, wasn't there, during the paro in all of these different sites, whether it's, you know, tumbando, knocking the statues over, you know, reworking things, repurposing things, all the stuff that was done at Los Héroes, many of the things that were done in Cali, and also right across the country. That was the other amazing thing about it, that it was everywhere, it seemed to be. That was really interesting. But there's a kind of asymmetry, isn't there, between that tremendous kind of artistic flowering and the monothematic messaging of the media, which seemed to me to be really summed up brilliantly by the fact that La Gente de Bien were going out covering up many of these messages with gray paint. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. It's like a kind of movie, you know, that we go and cover it up with gray paint. We don't want these messages out there.
Yeah, that was a very interesting in terms of anthropologic, you know, because and at the end it was an art fight, an art struggle, which for me is very interesting. I do prefer a fighting on the wall than a fighting through the rifles, you know. So of course for me it's terrible that gente de bien, the wealthy people that prefer Colombia being a perfect place, even though it's not a perfect place. So they wanted to throw the problems under the carpet, under the rug. Those people were coming back and painting gray those big murals, big messages that were appearing during the social unrest. They came and they painted gray. So it's really, I mean, it's very interesting in terms of anthropology, as I'm telling you. First of all, it seems very aggressive because why are you coming and erasing my mural? If you wanna do your mural, go and do it. There is a lot of walls. If you love Uribe, if you love paramilitary, go and do your wall that says, I love paramilitary, I love Uribe. But don't come to my wall and paint it gray. That's something that I don't understand. I mean, there is a lot of space for everybody here. I am expressing myself. I like heavy metal music. You like classical music. Go and put your music over there. There is a lot of space. Don't come here and trash my music. That's something that I don't understand. But then again, something that is very interesting is that people are noticing that the struggles can also be made in the wall, and discussions can also be taken to the wall. And it has been happening a lot. For example, we've seen it a lot of years ago in between the football teams here in Bogota. We have Santa Fe, we have Millonarios, and you see a wall that is being painted by Millonarios, and you see people from Santa Fe going over and fuck you, this is my team, pa, pa, pa. And it's very interesting that they are fighting on the wall and they are not killing themselves on the corner, which is also happening. So of course, I do, as an artist, as a pacifist, I do prefer people struggling and getting into discussions in the wall. The wall allows everything, you know, so we should try to get into more wall discussions and less into real discussions and rifle discussions and strugglings that has to do also with those ideas. I think different to you. I'm gonna kill you because I think different to you, which it doesn't make sense. It's probably probably better if we start fighting on the wall. And then again, if I see a fighting on the wall, it's very interesting, because if as a third party I see a struggle on the wall, I am going to be able to know what is happening on that country. That's something that is very interesting about the writings on the wall. You can read anthropologically a situation and a country through their walls. So I can come here into Bogota and I probably could get a hint on the differences in the political thoughts of the guerrilla, the paramilitary, the government, the Uribe, and all of the political situations through the walls. So for me, that's interesting and beautiful, you know, and it's even more important nowadays, knowing that the traditional media is working upon what the economic or political lines tell them to do. So it's very, very important that is this different, the dissent, the different ways of thinking that are not the traditional media or the government, they are expressing on the streets. And that's something that you could only get through those channels of the streets, which are very democratic, which are very diverse, and where you can see the struggle and the way of thinking of the whole community, not only the powerful people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, that certainly makes sense. Yes. I was thinking a bit about kind of like the issues around sort of the techniques being used as well, or the kind of sort of aesthetic approaches, right? In that, yeah, I was going to say something about those images that were obviously designed to be seen by drones, and I'm really glad you exemplified it so well. That image is a brilliant one. So yeah, so you can see that these things are designed to be shared on social media and all that kind of stuff. And there's a question around messaging, isn't there, that's quite interesting here, because on the one hand, we get, you know, proliferation of forms and images and sites of protest, and what we can see are a whole bunch of social demands coming together. I mean, you know, as we all know, it started off as something about a protest against tax reform, and then all of these things were bubbling around underneath came together. And I would say, from a purely sort of political perspective, the key thing right now is that there is some way of articulating all of those different demands into a kind of platform that's going to get something changed. And we can come back to that in a minute. But what I thought I'd like you to comment on maybe is that one thing I noticed as well, because right now we're trying to set up this virtual space where we're trying to share materials about the paro, and we're trying to get activists involved in it as well. It's a kind of initiatives that some Colombian colleagues who live outside Colombia are trying to get going. But what struck me as well is, yes, precisely both the kind of the simplicity of some of these things and the simplicity of some of the messages, but also the kind of sophistication of some of the work that's going on in virtual spheres as well, which has been really sort of impressive. So there's a kind of double movement going on there. I don't know whether you think that sort of makes sense. Is he there? Is he gone?
I had it in mute. Sorry. Okay.
No worries. I thought the question was so bad. He just can't.
Okay. No, I do believe that these community works that we're talking about, the biggest scale, huge works, are very interesting because, as we were telling, they allow the message to be delivered through different channels. It's not the direct encounter that you can have with a small piece in the city, on the physical space of the city, but it's also getting a hold on these new platforms, which are becoming even more important in terms of communication than real life. So for me, it's been a very paradoxic thing that nowadays, the virtuality, the possibility of seeing a work through Instagram or through Twitter, it has become more important than the real encounter with that painting on the streets. For good or for bad. For me, it was at the beginning very important, the material encounter of the painting, the message delivered directly to you, because it's like sharing a secret. It's like you're walking through and okay, while posting something on Instagram is just like shouting to everybody. And more if you're working with big scale works. The scale of the work has to do a lot with the way of communicating, and also has to do a lot, for example, in the different like areas of street art. For example, it's not the same doing a big mural, that doing a small pictogram on the street. If I'm doing a small pictogram on the street, you're gonna encounter this pictogram and you're gonna talk to that. You're gonna receive the message of that pictogram. If the pictogram was telling you a secret, it's gonna be something that is gonna be a dialogue in between you and the pictogram. Nobody is gonna be involved there because of the scale. But when you are looking at a mural, that mural, like an advertisement banner, is shouting to everybody. It's shouting to all the people of the block, and I can't talk to that image. The image is shouting to me. It's imposing. So there are very different ways, and something beautiful about acting on the streets is that you start discovering the differences of communicating in between the different pieces and the locations also. If I put it here, it's gonna be different. If I put it in the rural area, the scale of this mural is gonna be different than this illegal work that I'm doing on the night. So something that is very important for us as an artist is understand the way that art is communicating with me and the rest of the people. Because of course, this is all a communication game. I mean, if I put something on the street, I don't communicate, I will feel frustrated. And I do believe, and something that touches a little bit last question. I do believe in art that is able and that can communicate, and in some kind of way that it's intended to move your mind, to create a gap in your mind where you can see different ways of approaching life. If it trembles you and makes you being sensitive until being sensitive upon something that you haven't been sensitive before, and looking at that pictogram made you feel sensitive, or discovering something that you probably weren't able to know because of the media, because the media weren't showing it to you, and making you sensible about one small issue for me, that it's that I'm doing things in a good way. Just being able to change a little bit the way somebody is thinking, making that person more receptive, more sensible. For me, that's a way of doing things in a correct way. Now, I do believe art can act in a lot of ways. Art can be also emotive. I can see an artwork and probably it's not direct, but it's nice, it's beautiful. I like looking at that abstract artwork because it's beautiful, and it makes me feel a lot of nice emotions, but it's not opening my mind. So what you were telling me, you notice that my work has become more radical in terms of politics. Definitely at one point, and it has to do with these terrible situations that not only Colombia but the world is encountering. Of course, I've been feeling more tempted and more pressured in order to work in terms of political saying and pointing out political issues, not only being able to making an emotion on people, but trying to open the minds of those people. Now, when we go back to the huge works, you were talking about the aesthetic of those works. I believe that is very interesting, because aesthetic has to do also with your ego and your lines of working. What is your style? What is your line? You know, it's something that they ask you all the time. What is your style? What is your line? When they ask me that, I am like, damn it, I don't want to have a line, and I don't want to have a style. I don't believe that much in style. I believe in message. So I believe those huge blocks have a little bit of that, because when I'm not doing it, but we are 20 people that is doing it, we have to avoid the style. Because it's not your style, or my style. We have to do a neutral style in sometimes some kind of way. So even though they have some aesthetic approach in order to structure the letters, those structure or those aesthetical approach most of the times are leaving the ego and the individual aesthetics aside in order to propose an aesthetic that is very simple, so we can all the 20 people approach that simple aesthetic. We can settle up the aesthetic and end up doing the big letters without taking in account that much the aesthetic, but prioritizing the message and doing the aesthetic that allows everybody to get into to collaborate. Because probably I'm a guy that doesn't have a style and doesn't paint, but if they just tell me, here, just put white in this area, it's gonna be pretty easy. So those works are very interesting because they leave aside the aesthetical issues in order to prioritize the communitary issues and the message.
Sure. Laura, you jump in, yeah?
Yeah, sorry. I was just thinking about like when you were talking before about like this issue of like using digital media or social media and how like different art can communicate things in different ways. And I just remember when I lived in Bogota and I commute every day to the city center from Chapinero, and then I was seeing like loads of the work of DJLU and other artists. And I was really like, it's stuck in my memory, the faces. And I think that's really powerful because, and again, it's something that it's more about, I don't think the point is, yeah, and I think that's also what you were saying, like it's intertwined between social media and what happens in the city, in the world. But the power of, the way I see it, I don't know if what DJ Lu thinks about it, but like the power of seeing something in the wall is that it stays in social media. You see something, you might like it or not, but then it goes. And if you live in that city, if you pass, and I imagine it's the same in rural areas when you have like urban work or like, yeah, you see that every day and becomes part, it becomes a reminder. And when you see it gone, and it's painted gray, it becomes even more powerful because you know someone wanted that gone. Why? What's going on? What's happening here? And so I think it's very interesting what happens with that art in the streets. Yeah, I just wanted to say that just to add on. Thank you.
Yeah, it made me think of something that I already told you and I told you guys and I pointed out, that is the importance of the material, you know, and time and environment. You know, something that is really terrible about the new media is that it makes it so impersonal, it makes it so fast, and it, in some kind of ways, take out the very important issue of life and death. In the media, in the social media, there is no life, there is no death. Everything is like virtual, everything is immaterial. While in the real life, we have a very, very important relationship with the materic and the non-materic. And we know that materic is life and non-materic in some kind of way is death. And that's very important for us. And seeing a portrait of somebody that is not there, that is dead, is very important because it's bringing him back to life. Because I feel him so close that it's like having him again alive. I lived with those situations in where I have painted people that have been killed, and I've been painting them where I painted them with their familiars, and as soon as they see the painting become real, they start crying. Because seeing a painting is very powerful, because it's like having the people again. While seeing somebody through the pixels is not the same. The pixels and the non-materic of the new media is very fast, is very come and go, and it doesn't allow you to understand the importance of materic and life and death and representation. So encountering a wall, directly a wall, and getting to know that the wall is also disappearing, Okay, I am painting a guy that has, or a girl that has disappeared. So I am painting, I am bringing somebody back to life in some kind of way. But then again, you go by and you see that environmental issues and the world is falling apart. So it's killing him again because that's life and that's time. And that is beautiful. While some image in the media is extracted from time. And that's something that is weird for us, you know? And that's something that it's also, in some kind of way, I believe, taking us to ruin, because we are more and more getting apart from death and feeling afraid of death. That is something that we should know how to get to live with death, because we are, as we are alive, we are dead. And we would, I love painting on the street, because painting on the street has teach me to, and has making me understand of the transitions of things. If I paint something on the street, probably tomorrow or in a week or in a month, it's not gonna be there. And that's real, and that's the way of living. That's the normal way of everything that it's alive. It's gonna be dead and it's changing. And the virtual life and the virtual and the new media is taking us apart from that, because somebody on the something on the internet, on the web, on the digital world never dies. It never dies.
Yeah.
So that's something that is very interesting in terms of the real, the materic, and you pointed out. Okay, I've seen of your world, of your work in the media, and it's nice, but it's never gonna be the same as when I encounter it in the world.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say something about that, because what's kind of missing, and I guess that's what I was going to ask you about the pandemic as well, because, you know, yeah, I found it really interesting when you said, yeah, well, it's made it easy to do the artworks, but at the same time, you haven't got the same kind of flow of people. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's that issue about, okay, so you have these ghosts on the walls, yet their kind of materiality makes them more than ghosts. Yeah. And for all we can kind of intellectualize this, and you do tend to intellectualize it when you're just looking at an image on the screen, when you're walking down the street or you're on your way to work, you're looking for a tinto, or you've had a bad day, or whatever it is, there's a whole kind of sensorium. There's a whole bunch of feelings associated with that are related to your kind of encounter with those images, that works in a very different way from what we see on social media. You're absolutely right. Where, yeah, everything is immediately kind of layered over. Have you tried looking for things that you've posted in the past on various social media sites? Or even the way that, you know, certain social media sites have just become virtual cemeteries, haven't they? Those people seem to be alive. They've just stopped posting. But yeah, it's a very different experience from that kind of, that's kind of multi-sensorial experience of just walking across the city. I mean, that sense of Bogota, right? That very local sense. Even hearing the car alarm going off when you were talking earlier took me straight back to Bogota. I could even kind of smell the diesel, or this, you know, the smell of diesel on your clothes when you get in and all that kind of stuff. But those things that make a place, right? And yeah, that's lost, isn't it, in the virtual environment?
Sure. If I was thinking even in, for example, a photo album, an old photo album. Okay, we're talking about also representation, photographic, something that is not real. But then you take a photo, a big photo, a huge old photo album, and the images are in a different color, the smell. So that's an experience. The problem is that through social media, you don't have an experience. And if you want to go back to that photograph, it's not there anymore. Now you have another image. Damn. So it's the immediate. It doesn't allow you to think about something. It doesn't let you pause and understand an image. No, it's just consume image and go to the next. Consume and go to the next.
That's right. Yeah, the kind of the Kleenex thing. You use it, throw it away. Use it, throw it away. And it's become like that with so many things as well, isn't it? Even with music, the way people stream music, they listen to 5 bars of a track. And then don't like that. They don't bother listening to it. They just jump from one thing to the next. That's right. Yeah.
And something that for me is terrible, and it's also it's something that you can't get apart from that nowadays. But as an artist, for me, it's terrible that nowadays you are in the sense that you are on the virtual in the virtual media. I mean, it's more important to be on the virtual media, and if I have followers, and than on the real life. For me, that's in some kind of way terrible, because I am telling you that I prioritize the material and the encounter of the streets. And I, of course, love working on the streets. That's why I've been painting on the streets since 20 years, even though I've been having problems, the police, the environment, whatever. I love painting on the streets because I do prioritize and I do understand that the experience, first-hand experience of encountering painting on the streets is more important. But the problem is that nowadays, because of the new media, it is more important having followers than doing that on the streets. So what we are getting now is that there is a lot of street artists that do one painting on the street every 6 months, but they post a lot. So it becomes more important, the virtual than the reality. So that's something that I don't like that much.
Mm. Yeah, it certainly takes us away from that experience. Yeah. Absolutely. Can I ask you, I mean, I guess we should be coming towards the end, I guess. Yeah. I don't know how long we've got. You must be getting tired as well. But it's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I've got to say, I loved that presentation. So glad that you had it. And it was worth the wait. It really was worth waiting. And I so hope you can get over here and do the work in color coats that we were hoping to do, because it would be great if you could get over to this part of the world at some point in the near future. But I wanted to ask you a last question, and the rest of you are gonna have to forgive me, because of course I'm going to go back to politics, and because I haven't been able to be in Colombia, and I keep getting these. Well, this will be yet another second-hand message. I mean, so I think it's been really interesting and amazing the way that street artists have got involved in the so-called, well, estallido social, right? The social explosion, and I think they've played a really important role in kind of articulating the things that are going on there, expressing them, things which are very often a kind of inchoate anger, right? People are angry. Sometimes they don't know why. Their lives are a bit shit, or very shit in all sorts of ways. Young people feel that they don't have a future. You even get young people who say things like, oh, I saw some of the interviews with people saying, oh, well, we're not political, but, and then of course, everything they're doing is political. But I just wonder how you see your role, or if you have a role. I know that you don't have a kind of egotistical idea of sort of, leading people in particular directions, but helping to kind of, to make sure that this moment doesn't just pass, that it isn't just something which happened and then we can forget about it and we'll go to some elections and maybe there'll be some kind of slightly less right-wing candidate who becomes president, and yet we carry on towards the kind of disaster that's waiting for us unless we do something else about it. Do you think that do you think that this moment of the paro really is a kind of momento de quiebre, no? That it's a real kind of rupture with what went before. There's a before and afterwards. And how do you think? Do you think that how do you think sort of the role of the street artist in this works? What do you feel about that?
I do believe that art, as I was telling you, for me, art is a very, very powerful possibility in order to find better ways of living together in all sense. So, of course, when the struggle is higher, as we've been living here in the last year and a half, of course, it's more important for artists to get involved into these situations, because it's more important for us to struggle for better ways of solving those situations. I am pessimistic as you are, and I do believe that even though there is a political change here in our country, even though things start finding their way, even though there is still gonna be a lot of stuff to be done. And it's not only here in Colombia. And you pointed out, and I love that, you say, okay, you're talking about Colombia, but it's not only Colombia. We have corruptions. In India, we have environmental problems. In Japan, we have sociological problems, suicides. There is problems all around. And this doesn't seem to end. This doesn't seem to be getting better. So, of course, even though here in Colombia, the day of tomorrow, we have a different president, a president that for me probably is more social concern, and a president that is not so corrupt or whatsoever, of course, there is always, unfortunately, gonna be something to talk about. I always say, I am glad that I live in this world, because I am never gonna run out of things to criticize. Yeah. So unfortunately, we live in a terrible world. We as a humanity has terrible issues, terrible problems that are not gonna be solved the day of tomorrow. So even though here in Colombia, and I do want a different politic line here in Colombia, and I do want a change to be done in terms of politics, and I hope it happens during the 2022 when we have elections. But even though the candidate that I want gets into power and things get a little bit better, let me tell you, things are gonna still be terrible, and there is gonna be a lot of still a lot of things to point out. And art is beautiful in terms of pointing out things because it does it through a pacific form, it does it through a peaceful way, and it's a possibility, big possibility of opening minds.
Alex and Albert, I don't know whether you've got any questions or interventions. I'm sorry, I didn't ask you before. I should have done. But...
Well, actually, mine was sort of related to what has already been said, but I was thinking about the role of art in the Paro Nacional and how it might have kind of changed the normal narrative around protests in Colombia, where they're often kind of people who aren't part of them just dismiss them because, you know, oh, it's just vandals who are breaking everything, or it's just people causing bother. And actually, art seems to have played such a strong role, partly through things like the interventions in police stations and showing a maybe more peaceful side, but trying to get people on board a little bit more in a different way and to maybe listen to the demands a different way. So I wasn't sure what you felt about that and whether that has kind of continued, or whether, you know, there are still people in Colombia who are just dismissing the whole movement because of, you know, because they don't want to engage or don't want to believe in it.
This movement from the last year and a half, it's being different in some way, and it's very interesting because it has involved, it has taken up in account cultural movements. That was something that didn't happen in the protests before. As I told you, it has also something that is very interesting, and is that it became the protest started showing in different parts of the city. It's not concentrated on the central plaza, which was the way that it was before. We all went to the central plaza where the three powers were, like, you know, the plaza congregated the three powers: the church, the military, the judges, and the mayor. So people used to protest in the plaza, and it has been like that since the Agora in Greece. But nowadays, and I don't know why, but it's very interesting, the protests started appearing in different places of the city, you know, like the suburbs, in different plazas, in different monuments. And that makes it very different because it started trying to change minds of normal people. We are not criticizing only the government, so we're not going to go and throw rocks in front of the parliament or the government. No, we need everybody, normal people, regular people, to get sensibilized about what we're doing. So if I go to the main plaza, probably somebody that lives in Héroes in the north of Bogota, he's not going to be sensibilized by the protest. He's not even going to get to know the protest because he gets to know the protest by the media, by the traditional media, and traditional media is not going to say the truth. So when the protest goes to the neighborhood of everybody, you have, yes or yes, you have to be close to the protest, so it makes it more personal. And then again, something that changes everything is that the protest is not only throwing rocks. Of course, the protest is always gonna be throwing rocks, and we need the people that throw the rocks. But also, after the people that throw the rocks, it comes all the art artillery, which I believe is the most powerful. And we, during this struggle, noticed that. So we noticed that probably some years ago, okay, there was people throwing rocks, but nothing happened, because in the media, they say, okay, there were 20 vandals throwing rocks at the buses, and 2 minutes of news, and nothing happened. But nowadays, as we have this old cultural movement that has to do with painting, with music, with theater, for example, in the Héroes area, which we became a very big area of the protest, and it became very cultural place. There were also, like, for example, cars of the LGBT community going over there, and they were doing dances and DJing. So we noticed that culture was a very, very powerful possibility of getting to the people, not only of making the people that is protesting happier, but also the people that is going through, okay, what are they doing there? Look, they're painting, they're dancing. And being painting and dancing, of course, is going to be more effective than throwing rocks in some kind of way, because people are going to feel more sensibilized to those cultural expressions. So for me, mixing the cultural expressions into the protest is very, very effective and very, very important. Then again, I believe in the power of art. I believe that culture and art it's a thing that touches everybody. I mean, the ones that are not touched by culture or art are a very small percentage of people. But then again, I believe most people are sensible in some kind of way of cultural activities. So getting to them through the idea of cultural activity, dances, painting, and then delivering the harsh message in order to change their mind is the way to go.
Alex, have you got any question or anything you want to add?
No, I'm just listening with, yeah, everything is so interesting, particularly that last point about how people use the different parts of the city. And I think that ties in so nicely with a lot of the discussions that we had during the conference as well. So about, you know, how people can use different kinds of interventions in space to connect with that space, to connect with each other, and to kind of tie into different kind of political messages or ways that we, you know, appropriate space. So it was a really nice kind of thing to tie a lot of what we've been talking about together. And just to thank you, really, it was the main thing that I wanted to say. Thank you so much to Nick and to DJLU for such a great conversation today. And yeah, hopefully it will continue in the Northeast, fingers crossed, if we can get you over at some point, DJLU. It would be so nice to meet you in person and continue these conversations. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it was a brilliant, I really enjoyed it. The initial presentation just knocked my socks off. I really enjoyed that. And it was, you know, to have had a conversation without seeing those images would have been so sort of pointless, or, you know, the whole context would have been missing. So I thought it was, you know, exactly what we needed. And I got to say, but, well, I think that, you know, the work that you guys did in getting this together in the first place was amazing, right? And, you know, in spite of the difficult kind of circumstances, to have pulled it off in such a successful way is absolutely, you know, it's something you can be really, it was a real achievement, let's put it that way. So, you know, well done you guys on all that you've done around this.
Thanks. Yeah, and thanks Laura and Alex as well for stepping in as well when I couldn't couldn't do any more because of this baby here. But it's been really great to be able to join this talk and just to start thinking about the conference and everything. So yeah, I also want to throw in my thanks, and hopefully we'll see you soon, DJLU. I don't know if next year might be a possibility. You know, I guess we have to wait and see what happens with the pandemic and everything. But no, it's been great to hear you talk again.
Sure. Thanks, Alba, because I believe that you are the seed of this conversation. Yeah, thanks for the love that you feel for my proposal, the importance that you find on my proposal. Thanks, Nick, Laura, Alex, for making this possible. And of course, I hope also that the situation, the pandemics and everything allows us to meet next year in Newcastle. It will be great to expand all of these thoughts that we are sharing nowadays.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Excellent.
Great. So I think we stop there then. Yeah, there has to be a stop point.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop recording now.
Thanks a
Thank you
lot.
so much.
Thanks, everyone.